like you're saying, I really would love to get a little bit more of your wisdom on how to get that going, because I've tried it. I keep on trying. I'm not discouraged. I realize that it's a necessity. Back to your point again, my expression oftentimes is that nobody likes to be the first person in the bus.
Mm-hmm.
We have that expression here, or we call them taxis. So when you go to the public arena where these minivans stay, wait for people to take them to different places. Nobody likes to get in there when they're the first person, because it means you're going to wait. Everybody likes to get in there when it's like almost full, because then you're about to take off.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
it's interesting, and I think that also is evidence of impatience, right? So nobody wants to get on the bus if you're going to have to wait, right? Everybody wants to get on the bus when it's about to take off. It's like waiting in line, and it's interesting how, and I don't know if it's because of our society now where we're used to everything being immediate. We don't have to wait. We don't have to allow things to grow. We don't have to allow things to kind of come into their own. I wonder if some of that is coming into play in regards to the instant gratification versus kind of delayed gratification to an extent, if that's really seeping into how we operate, in a sense that we see stories and we see things appearing to happen overnight, but the reality is we don't know the backstory of how long it took for that thing to get there. You know what I'm saying? And so I wonder, like the bus analogy just really made me think about that. And I wonder if that's something that that's at play at times.
Yeah, I certainly think it's one component of it. But I also think the other side of that is that a lot of guys, well, the picture of success, the success that is painted out there is instant again. There's this notion that, you know what, you got to find the big contract. You got to find the big guy with the money that can give you a break. You got to find that massive break that's going to launch you and everybody, and then it's all over. It's almost like that lottery mentality. In South Africa, it was something we call tenderpreneurship, where these guys, a lot of guys are lining up for these government contracts or for these private company contracts. They're huge contracts, a couple of millions, and once you get in there, then you've made it, and or maybe you associate with a massive movement of some massive corporation that is doing, where you're going to be able to do massive business with them. And so a lot of guys don't like to build. To your point about patience, either don't like to build or not motivated to build because they feel like they're falling behind. Because the idea is that if you are Black, because of the previous disadvantages that happened because of apartheid or the previous government, you do have something that can fast launch you into success without you having to try, or without you having to begin from the beginning and put in the hard.
It's interesting. So it's funny that you're talking about it like through that lens. And again, I don't believe that anything happens by chance. I believe everything is kind of orchestrated. And what's fascinating is, earlier today, I read I do like scriptural reading just to kind of get my framework in place. But then I also think about an interpretation. And the scripture I was reading today was talking about how to God, a day can be 1,000 years, or 1,000 years can be one day, right?
Yeah.
And in my interpretation of that, on the bottom of after reading that, and I just put it out on Facebook, was that for God, a year can be 1,000 years, or 1,000 years can be one. But then on the flip side, something that's supposed to take years can take seconds, right? But that's not us. That's above us, and that's something miraculous that a lot of times mentally we can't wrap our mind around. And so there are things that are going to take a long time that don't necessarily need to. On the flip side, there are some things that can happen immediately that don't make sense, but that's beyond us and that's above us. And one of the things that I was kind of marinating on or kind of meditating on with that was this whole concept of trying to outthink everything, right? And some of us at times relegate ourselves to what we can intellectually conceive. And if you've never been exposed to something, it's hard for you to intellectually conceive that, right? It's hard for you to intellectually conceive that I can grow something slow, and with compound growth and interest, this small thing can turn into something large because maybe I don't have a body of work to prove that, right? On the flip side, it's hard for me to intellectually conceive, I'm chopping it up with my man Jabu on the other side of the world, and we put a plan together, and within a week or two, we've got millions of dollars in contracts. That's possible, right? Intellectually, it might be hard for me to think about it, but the reality is it's possible if I stop trying to overthink it and I just really do the whole mind, body, spirit connection and realize that it's bigger than us. And I think for us as brothers, sometimes we have to take a step back and realize that it's always bigger than us. And if we understand that, then we're open to collaboration. We're open to, building together. We're open to not competing, but collectively making something happen that could be synergistic. The sum is greater than the parts.
I really like that. And I was just thinking as you're talking now, so then what would be, I like the reality of understanding that those kind of events, of course, they are often divinely orchestrated. Mm-hmm. So God can make something happen just like that. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I'm asking myself, which is another question that I like to ask myself all the time, is that how prepared am I? How prepared am I for that massive opportunity?
Whew. And it's interesting. So before we started recording, I shared something with you that I had listened to recently by this Hindu mystic named Sadhguru. And he stated that a plan is an exaggeration of today, tomorrow, right? A plan is an exaggeration of today, tomorrow. But when I thought about that, I also thought about the whole concept of planning, because we've also heard the quote, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? And so when you connect the dots, it's like, yes, a plan is an exaggeration of today, tomorrow, because we don't know what tomorrow looks like. Take COVID, for example. But if for some instance or for some reason, tomorrow has a similar look to today, it's in your best interest to have a plan. You just should not be married to that plan just in case something happens that the plan no longer applies. So it's like this whole balance. And like you mentioned before, how are you prepared for the opportunity? I think that's that personal growth and development. It's spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, with your relationships, with your communication style, with your information that you're consuming, with everything, continuously being in a state of perpetual growth and development, so that when something happens, when an opportunity is presented, when you're on a plane next to somebody and a relationship develops and you're like, yo, this thing could be something special, you're ready for it because you've been doing this personal growth and development that puts you in a position that your best self is always there. It's not about me trying to match to the opportunity. It's about me being the best version of who I am and making sure that I align myself with things that are aligned with who I
am. I like that notion of not being married to a plan, being open to changing certain aspects of the plan, especially with the changing environment. I like that. I like that a lot because, thinking about it, there are a lot of guys that have had to change their plans because they were not so flexible.
Yes.
I put up a post the other day, and it went something like this: that I don't have a backup plan. I have all the other plans to support my plan A. And my plan A.
I like that.
Yeah.
I don't have a backup plan. I have all the other plans to support my plan A. Ooh. So check this out. It's interesting. So as you're talking, so I have this thing I call the Conquer method, right? But it's spelled CONCOUR, which is a combination of confidence and courage. Because my theory is every decision that we make in life requires either confidence or it requires courage. Either or. If you think that everything that you do in life, every decision, everything that you make in life is either confidence or courage. And confidence is because of. Meaning, it's like what you mentioned before. I have a body of work. I have experiences that I can pull from. I have something that I can tap into that gives me confidence to make this particular decision, right? If you swim really well, okay, I have confidence jumping into the deep end of the swimming pool and swimming across because I've done it 1,000 times, right? On the flip
Yes.
side, if you do not have that body of work, i.e. those experiences that you mentioned that back up plan A, you have to elicit courage. You have to tap into courage. And the question is, what is the thing in your life that's the root to your courage? What is that thing in your life that's going to be the backing that gives you the courage to make a step or take a step when you don't have a body of work to back it on, when you don't have experiences to lean on? You have to legitimately take a step and make something happen. But the funny thing about it with conquer, or confidence and courage combined, once you step into courage and you do something, whether you win or lose, whether it works or it doesn't, it automatically now jumps over into confidence, because that's added to your body of work. So you no longer have to have courage to do it again. You have to have courage to do it the first time, because after you do it the first time, it now jumps over into confidence. And now this is part of your body of work that you can recall when something similar pulls up again in your life.
Sure. Wow. Here's a thought that I have on that very same note. So it's something I was thinking about in relation specifically to being able to extract that body of work, which build up your confidence, that you no longer have to now venture into courage or tap into courage to do what you need to get done. And my thought was that as far as the purpose of memory is concerned, and given, of course, I mean, the challenges that we have a lot of times, especially as brothers, which have the similarities in terms of our backgrounds, what do you think about this thought? And that is that a lot of us think that the ability to remember, or memory, is about recalling the past, instead of looking at memory along the same framework that you've just shared now, which is this gift that God has given us to extract from the past lessons that are vital to help us to forge our way forward. Like, there are two things. We can either look at our past from the tragedy that happened, all the bad things that have happened, and we are stuck there. And we are stuck there in the moment. We're stuck in the present. We're not able to get out of the past. Or we can, like you just said now, be able to go back into our past, extract the lessons that we need to extract. But the ability to extract the right kind of information, it is confined to a goal. And if it's a goal, then goal directs that information. Actually, the goal builds the framework of intelligence of how we're going to use that information.
I like that. It's interesting what you're saying there. So when you pull from an experience is in the past. That means it's already happened. Okay. Yeah. That's history. That's water under the bridge. That's a sunk cost. That's done. But when I think about the conquer method, or eliciting either courage or confidence in the moment, that is present, right? The goal, which you mentioned, is future. Okay. So it's like I'm walking in a direction. So the goal is the direction. Conquer is the moment. The confidence is built off of something in the past. But the thing is, the future, we don't know what's coming. I mean, we can have a goal, we can have an idea of where we're going, but that changes, right? What's already happened cannot change. That's history. That is written. That is a fact. The only thing that we actually have is conquer. The only thing that we actually have is this specific moment. So what are you going to do in the moment? Because this moment will determine what happens in the future, right? On the flip side, this moment builds on what's happened already in the past. So it's kind of, when you think about, if you look at, I love to read people's biographies and look at their story and some of the things that they've gone through. And for someone who's achieved success, if you look back through their story, you're like, you know what, to be honest, they've gone through a whole lot. Uh-oh, you got something?
It's my wife. Just walked into the room.
Oh, tell her hello.
Come say hi to me.
Say hello.
Come. She just came back from work.
Oh, hey, how you doing?
Come hi. Yes, she is.
Hey, what's going on? Oh, look at you. You have a beautiful wife. All right, my name is Mike, Tennessee, USA.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I am wonderfully well. Great to meet you. Thank you for sharing Jabu with me.
All right, you're welcome.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, just get back from work.
That's cool. That's cool, man. And the thing too, though, is just like again, just thinking back to the concept of goal, conquer in the moment, but then confidence or experiences. It's basically past, present, future, right? And the reality is, we have to be hyper focused on the present because that's the only thing that we actually have. And the steps that we take in the present will lead to the goals that we have set, and those goals may change, but it also builds on the history of what we've done already. And what I was kind of expounding upon a second ago, when you look at the story, they have successes, but then when you look through it, a lot of times they've had a whole lot of failures, challenges, turmoil, and all of that. But the funny thing is, because of that success in the moment, people forgot about all the stuff that they've gone through, right? And so it's kind of like the present is so extremely important because it helps to balance off some bad stuff, but then it also helps to validate some stuff that maybe, what was great. You know what I'm saying? So I just think it's important. I think the moment is what we need to really find a way to hyper focus on, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, of course, I like that. And my question that I have in my mind is, what would you say as far as courage and the goal and the moment is concerned? Do you think there's a relationship there? Does the goal itself, depending on the importance of the goal as you understand it in the moment, can that help us to build courage?
I think so. I think the goal has to be rooted in something bigger, right? Because when you think about your purpose or your calling or what it is you're designed to do here on earth, we have to think about it through the lens of the why, right? Because when you understand why you're here, you understand why you're doing something, then that's the fuel which helps to push you forward. Otherwise, if you just set an arbitrary goal, what is the inspiration to keep you going should something get hard, right? And I think that's why a lot of people jump off the bandwagon or they change course. Every time you talk to them, it's something else because it's nothing rooted. Like that goal is not rooted in anything, or it doesn't have to be a goal. The direction is not rooted in anything, and because it's not rooted in anything, you think about roots of a tree. If a strong wind comes for a tree with very shallow roots, that tree is going to blow over. Whereas that tree with really, 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 really deep roots, a strong wind comes and it's going to withstand. And so if your goal is rooted in something that's deep and strong, I think that helps you in the moment to make the decision and push through when things get difficult, when you need to elicit courage.
Awesome. No, I love that. I love it. I love that. I just took your seat there, decided let me be Mike on the other side and be asking the questions.
I love it, man. We need to do more of this, man. Like literally, because I love your perspective and I love the way that you think because you're very solutions oriented, right? You're like, how do you take all of this, pull it together, and formulate a solution that's going to help in the moment? And that's where I am. It's just, I'm not one that likes to, do all of this abstract stuff if it's really not leading towards anything and if it really can't help anybody. My calling literally is to empower, to encourage, but then to also pull the best out of others. And so if I'm not able to do that, it kind of just like, okay, I kind of feel like, okay, I'm not really on purpose right now. And so the way that you think helps me to stay in that as we communicate.
Yeah, because I think one of the reasons why I wanted us to talk today was to actually speak about that. I was thinking, how can we facilitate these kind of discussions and be able to bring brothers in and have a much broader perspective? And that's the first part. Like I was thinking, man, you know what? It's very encouraging. I think it'll be very encouraging for a lot of especially of African brothers, and maybe even they over the States, for them to see us have these kind of discussions even live and even inviting the guys to maybe say one or two things, whether it's something that we can do once every 2 months and then do some kind of promotional work around it. And then the other thing is that along with that as well, I wanted us to think about how can we combine what we have to build a solution that they can be a part of.
Yes.
Whether it can be something that we can run for 3 months, for 6 months, for 12 months, where that will be paid. and we can be able to, do it that way. When I come to the States, I'll come through to where you're at. We can make it happen, and hopefully at some point we can be able to also do the same thing live, whether we're doing down here in South Africa or whether we're doing over there in the States or maybe other parts of Africa as well. So that's a thought that I had in my mind.
Man, it's interesting. I would love to, and I think just the whole notion of like the global mindset, right? Like it's like really us thinking. I know, a lot of people use the Pan-Africanist term, where it's basically kind of like the global, African mindset or African-centered mindset. And I think, typically speaking, to high capacity, high functioning brothers on a global level, how do we help to unlock and uncover and open their minds and mindset to thinking about things on a bigger level, right? On a bigger picture. But then also it's not limiting you to, you just have to be an entrepreneur, or you just have to be a corporate guy, or you just have to be in government, or you just have to be a brother who works in an hourly gig or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just all about, if you're high capacity and you want to think from a global perspective in a way that allows you to connect across the waters to brothers who are doing things, maybe are in different industries and maybe have different backgrounds than you, but you're all collectively walking in this thing together. Like, how do we formulate something there? Because I do see what you're talking about. And I think there's something that, and there's a niche there that I think could be very valuable individually, but then also, I think we could challenge organizations and entities and corporations to say, look, you all need to invest in this type of training for the brothers within your organization if you want them to be the best version of who they are, right? Because being the best version of who you are might mean that you're in the right place, but you also might find out that he's misaligned and he needs to go somewhere else. That actually benefits your organization because you don't have someone that's there that doesn't need to be there, right? You have a brother there that's going to bring the most to it. And so I think there's an opportunity but that's also investing in the individual growth. And I think we need that. We need more individual growth so that we can become the best versions of who we are, so that when we do align, we're bringing the dream team together. We're not just bringing, subpar pieces that are trying to complete each other. It's like, no. We're bringing the dream team. Like that's that's what this thing is all about.
I like what you mentioned now about the organizations, because what I was sharing 2 days ago when I was facilitating this training with these, like executives in the automotive industry. I mean, we're talking about guys that are like multimillionaires, in dollar terms, that are running industry. And one of the thoughts that I had was that, especially in South Africa, I'm not sure what is like in the States, but when an African goes into let's say a Mercedes-Benz dealership floor to go buy a car, when they walk in, what are they already experiencing? Emotionally, mindset wise, what are they expecting from whoever's going to walk up to them to talk to them? The lack of familiarity sometimes even with the process, and in terms of the life stages as well. I mean, what is that person actually? Are they there to buy a car, or are they there to, to celebrate? Is buying a car fulfilling the idea of, okay, I need transportation because I'm a limited human being, or is it a matter of, well, I'm buying Mercedes-Benz because it is proof to me that I've arrived. I am somewhere. And on top of when I walk into those high-end places, what am I expecting? And what would shock me? What would make me feel like I've had an amazing experience, and what would not make me feel like I've had the most incredible experience, And I think the notion of that, or the idea behind that is in thinking about what I'm proposing. When we start to tackle the struggle with brothers, from unpacking the variables of struggle that constitute the life of a brother, and I'm using, I think I've mentioned this, but I'm using those words quite intentionally. Unpacking the components of or the variables of struggle that make up the struggles of a brother, and how to overcome that. Because I do find that a lot of times with these motivational talks, with some of these training, it's like it's oftentimes spoken of from a place of safety and security, and oftentimes the kind of methods of overcoming that are being shared are lacking that component. They're lacking the relevance of these are the struggles that brothers have mentally, emotionally, coming from a poor background that doesn't have a strong institutional framework, which then impacts their relationship with time, among other things, their relationship with money, among other things, the relationship with their own identity as men, among other things. What happens when you put that brother in an executive position, and they still have not resolved a little bit of the trauma that they came up with?
You know what is interesting? So one of the things that I thought about, and this was probably about 6 or 7 months ago, with creating what you're talking about, is the prior to solution, right? So when you think about growth and development, it's the prior to solution. So before you even step into this role, this is something that you need to run through. Or when you're early on in this, the organization needs to invest in your personal growth and development. I've spoken with a few brothers in, various entities, and it's starting to become more and more common where, especially when you start getting to executive levels, where part of your compensation package is they pay for you to have an executive coach, right? Because they want you to have that executive coaching experience so that you can grow individually, right? But from a cultural competency perspective, there is a lot of opportunity for, and again, this is a very niche market, but when we're talking about possibly even looking at growth and development for high level, high capacity brothers in various positions, circumstances, and or situations, you now have an opportunity to almost serve as this culturally competent, relevant entity that helps you to grow in your identity, your capacity, but then also gives you the freedom and flexibility to be agile in how you operate, so that yes, you have plans, yes, you have goals and directions, but you're not necessarily married to the methodology. You're in the right direction, but you're so confident in who you are, you understand yourself, and then you're rooted in everything. And this is when you can tap into the mind, body, spirit connection. You're rooted in things that will give you the courage when you do need to make a decision. You can make that effectively, but this is also wrapped in who you are, so you never lose who you are. Because a lot of times what I find with brothers, especially in corporate spaces, over time, you either get beat up or you get chipped away. It's kind of like a chisel chips away at who you are. And so you end up being just a shell of who you are, or a small fragment of who you are. And what value are you bringing to the world, to any organization that you're with, to your family, to your community, to your tribe, to your country, to yourself? What value are you bringing to the table as a shell or a small fragment, right? We should not subject anybody, like Jabulani Zwane should never subject anybody to a fragment of who he is. Like you're doing them a disservice by not being able to see the full magnitude of who you are, because somebody's life can change by experiencing the full magnitude of you. Vice versa, Mike Dorsey, somebody experiencing only a fragment of me, only getting part of my attention or a portion of my love or heart or what's inside of me or what's flowing through me, I'm doing them a disservice, because what if that thing that's flowing through me changes their life and I'm restricting or holding back on that? And see, that's where we have to get to the point of our identity has to be solid. We have to be very firm in our capacity, but then we have to be agile so that we can move in these spaces in a way that brings our best, so that we benefit. Yes, I mean, come on, it's okay to benefit, right? But on the flip side, everybody that we interact with benefits on that level as well.
So, man, how do we do that? Let's do this.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Let's figure this out, man, because we're going
Let's
we're
figure
gonna
this out, bro. Let's
yes,
figure this out, because I'm telling you right now, I mean, this is a challenge. Because what happens, I like what you mentioned now, is that what ends up happening when you get up there is that you just give a fraction of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You give a fraction of yourself, and that's what ends up creating that gatekeeping mentality.
Yes, yes.
Where you actually become a gatekeeper and maintainer of that status quo.
Can I tell you, and I also, and that's why when I mentioned I mentioned it before, the concept of high capacity brothers or high achieving brothers. There's another challenge that nobody talks about, right?
Yeah.
And there's this challenge that, and and people don't look at it as a challenge; they think it's a benefit. But there's a challenge where your 30% is better than most people's 90 to 100%. See, the problem when it's like you take a superior athlete, right? You take Usain Bolt from a few years ago, right? Usain Bolt probably did not have to exert 100% to beat just about anybody on the track, right? The problem is by him getting used to only having to give 50 or 60%, because his 50 or 60% is going to win him a gold in virtually every race that he runs. He then wires himself to never go past that 50 or 60%. Right? So
Yeah.
yes, and the problem is when that's good enough, you're selling yourself short because the world then never sees what Usain Bolt. Now he might have given this 100. I'm just using him as an example, but the world doesn't get the chance to see what Usain Bolt is at 100% because he's never had to go over 60%. He's never had to turn the throttle up because his 60% is always good enough. There's a lot of us that are floating in spaces where we are naturally good enough to be at the top of the game or whatever, but we're still only operating at 50 or 60%. What if somebody comes in and unlocks that thing and then you blow the roof off and then it's just like, whoa, we ain't never seen nothing like this before, right? But to your point, being able to just coast at 50 or 60%, you know what I'm saying? Then you become a gatekeeper. Then it's like not about growth. It's about how do I protect my position? You know what I'm saying? And the challenges, but that's another component that nobody talks about. When you're gifted, when you're talented, how do you then push yourself? It's like with track and field. Track and field is a good example because track and field, yes, you race against other people, but the reality is you're racing against time. So you're really racing against yourself.
Against yourself.
That's right. If Usain Bolt only raced against the competition, he never would have broken the world record. He would have just done enough to win the race, which would have been good enough, but we never would have talked about him as the fastest man ever. But because he said, forget racing against you, I'm racing against myself. I'm racing against the time. I'm racing against what I'm capable of. And you're pushing that. That's where we have to start tapping into what am I capable of? Not what's required of me. What am I capable of?
Yeah, like what is my max? I mean, that's the thing that I said to remember this young guy one time. I said to him, you know, here's my challenge to you. I want you to imagine what would happen with your life if you just unleashed yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like what would happen if you just unleashed yourself? Like forget what everybody else is saying. You know, you're worried about everybody else, but what happened if you just allowed yourself to step into that space where you're like, you know what? I'm going for it. I'm surrendering to all that possibility has for me. I'm surrendering my potential to all that the possibility has for me.
Mm-hmm.
What would that look like? But I mean, I think that so many of us don't have the privilege to get into that space because of all the variables of struggles that we have to be contending with, and many of which we're not even aware of. Many of which are mindset related.
Dude, it's the zoo versus the safari.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And if we can remove those out of the way and put them for what they are without over specializing some of them, although a lot of them are very connected to the environment, yes, and then to the systems, yes, to the structures, yes. But if we just took them out and say, okay, this is the reality of what you're facing, but also this is the reality of those that have gone before you and how they've overcome them. This is where they ended, and this is where you can take it further. And just leave it at that. Like, listen, this is the struggle of you as a brother with your kind of background, based where you come from. But if we can overcome this hurdle here, get over this step here, what can stop you from being all of who you imagine yourself to be?
Hold on. See, I would even challenge that a little bit in the sense of it's not about what you imagine to be, because what you can imagine to be are things that you've been exposed to, right? So, and that goes back to what we were talking earlier about overthinking. So we're trying to think our way out of it. And the reality is, it's not about necessarily thinking your way out of it and trying to conceive what it is I want. It's more so about tapping into who you are and getting out of the way and allowing that thing to just manifest. That's why I use the example of the zoo versus the safari. You know, for me, when my wife and I went to Tanzania years ago and we went on a safari, and for me, I was thinking that a safari was a big fenced in area. I thought it was going to be like a park, right? Like where it's fenced in and the animals were kept in. And they had a little gate that you drove through, but that was just so the cars could drive in. But outside of that, it's just wide open savanna. That's it.
Wilderness. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wilderness. Like it blew my mind, because in my mind I was thinking that this was like, you know, I was thinking of it like a zoo where there's a fence somewhere keeping the elephants in and keeping the keeping the lions in, or no, it's just wide open space. And I remember the guy who was doing our tour, he was like, yeah, sometimes they creep over into the village over there and they have to chase them back in over this way because there's nothing keeping them in. You ride down the street and baboons are running across the street. And I mean, it's just all this stuff, right? But there's no limits. And because there are no limits, there are no bounds. And so it's not even bound by what you can conceive. And so what we have to start doing is really tapping into what we're capable of and just seeing like, look, I'm capable of doing so much. Now, I don't know what that leads to, but I'm capable of it, right? So now it's opening myself up and having experiences and tapping into, and that goes back to what you're talking about, exposing people to possibilities so that they can see it. But then it's not even about limiting that. It's about then opening yourself up to anything, because it could be that, right? It could be a little bit more. It could be just take this and accelerate it a little bit. Or it could be like, okay, this is just gets me in the right direction. I'm about to completely blow this thing up and move. But I have to open myself up to not just overthink and tap in to this thing that we have flowing through us.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Just a thought, so, you know, I get excited. Yeah.
No, but this is great. This is great. I mean, this is this is what it's about. You know what I mean? That's why I wanted us to really reignite the connection that we had, and just to see if a flame can start there. You know, see how high can the flame burn, man? You know, and you know what I mean? That's what I was thinking. And so I don't really have an idea of how we take it forward from here. Maybe I will sit and then just write up a few of my ideas and then send them through to you.
And I'll do the same. Yeah. And what we'll do, and again, and see, I think this is a testament to it all. We don't know what this thing could look like, but guess what? We know that it's something. And so you just start walking in that direction collectively, throwing ideas back. And dude, I promise you, because we're aligned in a very deep manner right here, right? And I think there's something will come about that's going to be monumental, that will impact the people that we're supposed to impact. Maybe we're thinking about it, we're supposed to impact this group, but you know, the reality is we're supposed to be over here impacting this. Who knows, right? But at the end of it all, it's about starting, being open to collaborating and connecting and bringing gifts to the table, skills to the table, and just dialoguing about it and seeing what happens.
Yeah, then let's do that.
Yeah. So we're going
to. I know without a doubt that there's room for the sisters, because I know with my work, I mean, 70% of my clients, 75% in fact, of my clients are professional African women. You know, they're professional sisters. Because they obviously they experience the extreme end of what we're talking about, or maybe a different kind of end, but it's more extreme, I think, in many respects, because even physically, in terms of their health, I mean, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, all of these autoimmune diseases that are related to the pressures that they feel, especially in the corporate environment. And so, I think it's sitting down, and I'll sit and I'll write down what I think, and then you do the same thing, and then we just be intentional in having conversation that is unfolding.
Yes.
And being prayerful, trusting God for direction, and seeing how far we can get. You know.
That's it.
Maybe
That's
maybe 2022. I'll be there somewhere in the States, and then we'll be having a conversation. And later in the year, you're down here in SA, we're having conversation with, you know.
Mhm.
I think
Let's
that's doable, but that's just my limited mind thinking. At the end of the day, you
Mhm.
know, it is divine orchestrated. So whatever God has,
That's it.
I want to surrender. I want to surrender to that possibility.
That's, you know, and I think that surrender to the possibility. Like I think that in itself is that's the framework that we're working with. Surrender to the possibility.
Yeah.
Surrender to the possibility, and then and don't limit it. Surrender to the possibility, but don't limit the possibility. And so I think that's where you and I have to start, and we have to challenge each other to not limit it by putting this on it and putting that on. No, surrender to the possibility and walk in that direction. And this thing will open up, man. I just got chills up my spine. I guess yeah. Just, and so I'm committed to that, surrendering to the possibility with Jabulani Zwane. Is Jabulani, that's the whole full name, right?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Why do you just do Jabu then? Why do you not use Jabulani?
Well, it's commonly, you know, it's just one of those, it's a shortened you know, name.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times, I suppose people just, it's a term of endearment. I mean, you know, so I just embrace it.
Okay.
My family calls me Jabulani, but then out there in the world, Jabu is the most common name for people with my name.
Oh, interesting. Well, I mean, you know, my name is Michael. Yeah, I go by Michael.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah. I just didn't know, because you know I can kind of understand at times when you know the pronunciation becomes challenging and people have an issue, but Jabulani is not hard, so that's not you know that's.
No, it's not. I mean, but people butcher it though. I've been called Jabubu. I had an older African American sister in a church in Baltimore calling me Pastor Bubu.
Pastor Boo Boo.
Pastor
She
Bubu.
couldn't say Ja. She couldn't say Ja on the beginning of it.
I'm like, why is she calling me Bubu? I'm like, okay, this is convenient now.
Yeah,
ma'am.
I love it, man. I love it. Now that's funny, man. But yeah, brother, let's I gotta jump off and get something going. But yeah, let's commit to this. Let's commit to this, man. And you know, just surrendering to the possibility and just start sharing ideas back and forth, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, great. Now let's do that. I think maybe once every